Good morning, good morning. I am in the park early this morning, and the breeze is really, really nice. It's very, very quiet and still. And I wanted to talk this morning about a topic that may be a tad bit triggering, but we have to talk about it nonetheless. Let's talk about unhealthy love. Because I think sometimes, and I'm guilty of it as well, I think sometimes we confuse ourselves with what love looks like. And there's always an opportunity for us to change that narrative into something better. Especially the more we know, you know the saying, when you know better, you do better. Now I know it may sound unprofessional when I'm outside. You hear the dogs barking, you hear the birds chirping, you may hear cars passing by. However, that's just a distraction. The animals are not a distraction, they're just being themselves. But please don't pay attention to the noises that you hear in my surroundings. It's the message that I would love for you to pay attention to. Again, I'm no editor, I'm no professional at speaking the truth. I just speak it. And sometimes, my voice or the background or whatever, it may not sound very professional, but I would love for you guys to just get the message. But let's talk about unhealthy love, because love is a beautiful thing. It's the best thing ever. It's the best thing in the world, in my opinion. It is the strongest energy, the strongest force, and it can overcome anything. However, sometimes we confuse, and again, I put myself in that category because I've been guilty of this as well. But sometimes we can confuse love with many different things. Sometimes we can confuse love with control. Let's talk about that first. Sometimes we can confuse love with control, because sometimes we get into situations to where, because we love someone, we feel that we have the right to control someone. And again, I'll say it 1,000 times, I've been guilty of this before on numerous occasions. Sometimes you can love someone so much that you have a fear of losing that individual, and so you try to control them so you won't lose them. Now that doesn't take away from the love that you have from them or for them, but it is unhealthy, because none of us have the right to control another individual. It doesn't matter how long you've been with that person, because let's be honest, sometimes ourselves or other people can dangle in front of us the length of time that we've been together. Let's say you've been together for 15 years. And let's say one party is not satisfied with the relationship and they would like to leave the relationship, but the other party doesn't want them to leave the relationship. Now let's think about that. That's kind of holding somebody hostage against their will, when you try to force them to stay with you because of the time that you've been together, or because of the fact that maybe you still want to be with them, but they don't necessarily want to be a part of the relationship anymore. And sometimes people love someone so much that they may try to take that right away from you to exit a relationship that perhaps you've just outgrown. It doesn't take away from the love that you have for that person or the memories that you shared with that person. However, that's very unhealthy, in my opinion, to try to force someone to be with you, or to feel as if, well, if you are not going to be happy with me, then you do not have the right to be happy with anyone else, or to be happy by yourself. And then it comes to manipulation. Individuals will start to try to manipulate you into forcing you to stay with them, into forcing you to be with them, into forcing you to stay in a relationship. And that's unhealthy. That's very unhealthy to me. Sometimes people love you so much, and again, I don't take away from the love that people have for someone else, but what I do take issue with is forcing someone to be with you. You know, there's nothing wrong with loving someone and not wanting to be without that person. You know, even if they choose to move along with their lives, there's nothing wrong with that. And it is very hurtful, you know, if you want to be with someone but they no longer want to be with you. That's very hurtful, especially if you're super in love with that person and you don't want to see that person go. The thing about that is sometimes that individual has reasons for why they would like to part ways. Sometimes, you know, it's reasons that has nothing to do with you. You know, perhaps it could be anything. So I could go on and on for days with examples of that, but it could be anything. Sometimes it has nothing at all to do with you. The only thing you can take ownership of is when someone wants to move on with their life, because perhaps there are reasons that has to do with you to where you guys are no longer a vibrational match at all. You know, sometimes we don't want to take ownership for certain things. I've been in relationships before to where another individual wanted to move on, and I did not want them to move on because I was still in love. I still wanted them to be in my life. And so you tend to block out the fact that perhaps I have something to do with the reason why this individual wants to move on. You have to ask yourself certain questions. How much did you give to the relationship? You know, how transparent were you? How loyal were you? You know, did you really give that relationship the honor and respect that you should have? Because everyone has their breaking point, and sometimes it's not verbalized, sometimes you don't see it, sometimes it's internal to where a person says enough and it's just no longer a vibrational match for them and they would like to move on. Now when that happens, we tend to want to trap that person. We tend to want to control the narrative of if that person is able to move on or not. And we actually don't have that control. Only that person has control. Only the Most High has control as far as the moves to make in a person's life. Sometimes one of the hardest things to do is to let someone go that you love. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to know that someone that you love can be with someone else, can be happy without you. Sometimes it's hard for us to take responsibility for the part that we played with the relationship not working, because sometimes we're either focused on the things that that individual has done, or even sometimes, let's say if someone wants to be with someone else, sometimes it's difficult for us to imagine them being with someone else, so we look for someone or something to place the blame on. Sometimes there is no blame to place. Sometimes two people have just outgrown each other, or perhaps maybe they're just on a different frequency. And when two people are on a different frequency, you have to respect that. You have to respect the fact if someone wants to find someone who's on the same frequency, you know, like-minded individuals. And that's just not in romantic relationships, that's even with friendships. Sometimes you outgrow your friends, you know, sometimes you figure there are things that you and your friends bond over that's not good for you. Sometimes even in romantic relationships, sometimes people stay together for the wrong reasons. It's not because they're happy. Perhaps maybe, you know, they're just used to somebody, or their insecurities, you know, they don't want to be alone, so they stay in a situation. And a lot of times the relationship is toxic, it's unhealthy, and people stay in it anyway out of fear of being alone, out of fear of starting over, you know, out of fear of the unknown. But that even takes me to, you know, another reason why sometimes love is unhealthy. It's an unhealthy love. Sometimes I feel that people take love and lust and put it in the same category. Now, I do feel like there's a distinct difference between lust and attraction. You know, I do feel there's a huge difference. In my personal opinion, I don't feel you can build a relationship off lust. because at some point that lust fades away. At some point you have to ask yourself, what else is there? One day, if you're in a relationship, let's take that for example. If you're in a relationship, and let's say your relationship is built off lust, well, what happens when you get older? What happens when the lust is not a factor anymore? What happens when now you have to rely upon the friendship? What happens when you have to rely upon the love, the loyalty? If those things don't exist because you've relied upon the lust, what happens then? And I don't even know if I can call that unhealthy love, because you can love someone and be attracted to them. You can love, we're all adults, so we can speak in an adult fashion. You can love someone and be totally attracted to them. You can love someone, and I would not use the word lust when it comes to true love. You can love someone and be attracted to them. You can love someone and want to make love to them. I don't think, in my personal opinion, that you can love someone and say want to just have sex with them. There's a huge difference between having sex and making love. Anybody can have sex. You can have sex with anyone, but you cannot, in my opinion, make love to anyone. You do feel the difference. You literally feel the difference between having sex with somebody, even if it's great sex. It could be lustful, great sex, but that making love, baby, that's a whole different thing. That's a whole different thing. The exchange of those emotions, that's a totally different feeling. It's on a different level. That lasts. Lust, I don't think that lasts. And sometimes, let's say people stay together for the fact of great sex. Let's just be honest with ourselves. We've all experienced great sex before. We've all experienced mind-blowing sex before. But not everybody has experienced the true art of making love. Not everyone has experienced that. Not everyone knows that feeling of expressing yourself through the art of making love, because it is an art and it's beautiful. It's not lustful, it's beautiful. So again, I won't sit here and act like I've never been guilty of these things, because I absolutely have. We all grow through it. We all try to come to some understanding of boundaries, and it takes a lot for us to understand that loving someone does not mean you have the right to control them. Loving someone does not mean lusting. It's two different things. Now, I'm no professional when it comes to love and relationships and things of that nature, because I've had plenty of relationships that failed. And I'm not asking anyone to follow what it is that I'm saying. I'm just giving my opinion, and I'm just hoping that I inspire anyone to look within when it comes to unhealthy love. You have to face certain things about yourself, because a lot of times we look outside of ourselves. We look to place blame. We look to manipulate. We look to control, and I just don't feel those things are right. Now, let me be clear. I don't feel that any of us are crazy if we love someone so much that we really want to be with them, even if they don't want to be with us. Or, if you are friends with someone and they've outgrown the friendship, we're not crazy if you still love that person or you still want to be around that person. I don't feel that's crazy. It's an emotion. Where I do feel the problem lies is how you react to that. How much respect you show that person for wanting something different. And if you truly love someone, if you really, really love someone, then you want that person to be happy, regardless of if they're with you or not. You want that person to be free to make their own decisions without manipulation or control. You want that friend to be able to, outgrow the friendship in a healthy fashion and find more like-minded friends. You just want the best for people. That's real love, in my opinion. That's true love. Just wanting the best for people. Sometimes the best for that person is you. Sometimes it's not. And those are things we have to wrap our head around, because it's very important to respect people's freedom. It's very important to just understand that we can't control someone just because we love someone. And it doesn't make the other person crazy for wanting different, for wanting better. It doesn't make them crazy for that. Because when I love people, I've grown to understand I love you enough whether you want to be with me or not. Our friendship is at the level to where I love you enough to where if you outgrow the friendship, I'm still going to love you anyway, even if we're no longer friends. We can no longer be friends and I can still love you. And that doesn't make me crazy because, of course, I'm not crazy and neither are you.